I'd like to begin by posing some questions. We have a good audience here, and I wonder, do you all have digital transformation programs, or are you just thinking about it? If you have a program, does it have a clear business objective, or is it just seen as a technology program? And does data fit in as a critical element for delivering better customer experiences, or is data not high on the agenda? Today, I want to explore these themes, and we'll do so by covering the following. What is the pressure for change to embark on a digital transformation that improves the customer experience? Why is it so difficult? And an example of an approach which might be useful. So, what are the drivers for change? The first is customer experience and expectation. Financial systems were historically designed for the institution, not for customer. Access was tightly controlled through limited hours, branch hours, telephone calling in. Access was always via an intermediary, by an employee, and data was collected and presented to fit internal needs. Today, the reverse is true. Customers are in control. They expect to be always on, 24/7. They expect real-time performance and responses, and they demand added value from the organization. The result has been an explosion in demand for value-added data from the organization. Customer behaviors are changing the way data is collected, used, and displayed. Secondly, regulators have changed the game. Customers now have strong rights over their data. In Europe, PSD2, open banking, these champion data portability and open up access to third parties, aggregators, and non-financial companies. GDPR has raised the bar and highlighted the difficulty in being able to find, manage, and control a customer's data. Historical remediation has demonstrated the constant difficulty of recreating data in a usable format, as it's often fragmented and difficult to use. So in summary, regulation has raised the bar for compliance and will drive a massive increase in demand for data from aggregators, new entrants, and the regulator. Thirdly, to exploit the data asset, new technologies such as big data, cloud computing, analytics, artificial intelligence, machine learning are all used to open up new opportunities. But to be successful, they require to access a massive amount of data and significant computing power. They do so in a way which highlights shortfalls in legacy architectures and technologies, as the applications and infrastructure struggle to meet demand, deliver in a timely manner, and provide an enterprise view of fragmented and unstructured data sets. However, it's not all bad news. Established players have a critical advantage, namely the vast amount of data held on customers, their finances, and their lifestyle. By using this knowledge, your organization can create new experiences and add value. Some examples. We can provide customers the ability to control and manage their finances in real time, provide them with budgeting tools, cash flow management, real-time management of card spend, analysis of where the money goes. We can use the data to identify and provide tailored offers to customers, true personalization. We provide initial safeguards in terms of real-time protection from fraud. And looking wider, there's an opportunity to define new business models. For example, provide financial services marketplace, matching customer insight with third-party providers. Provide instant loans rather than a turnaround of 20, 30 days. And offer secure data storage for critical docs and lifestyle data. We can use artificial intelligence to move to true personalization and create new customer experiences through graphics, interactive processes, and intuitive interfaces. So if it's all so good, why are we not delivering? Why is transformation so difficult? And among the biggest challenges is data. For example, access to data. We now have insatiable demand, but many legacy systems constrain access. And much of the data is not usable as it's stored in an unstructured way as images and PDF. Secondly, data quality and data integrity issues become much more visible. Presentation is hampered by multiple formats and inconsistent meaning. For example, different rules and definitions apply across systems. There's a limited knowledge and documentation of the data. And data integrity is typically limited to a system, not across the enterprise. And finally, quite often data has degraded in quality over time due to lack of control, management, and ownership. Data-related risks are becoming more prominent. Obsolescence often contributes to data access breaches and data leakage with severe consequences. As technology cycles increase, applications and infrastructure become obsolete quicker, and the cost of maintaining, updating, and upgrading becomes more costly. This, combined with the regulatory agenda of compliance, data security, and protection, raises both the risks associated with data and the cost of maintenance. The total cost of IT is rising. Although in the cloud we see unit costs decreasing, the total cost of ownership is increasing. Transforming platforms to be digital is expensive and very high risk. Business as usual running costs are soaring because access to legacy data is inefficient. Mainframe-based MIPS are expensive. And demand forecasting is extremely difficult in the new world, resulting in expenditure on excess capacity. And we know the pressures of that because the regulator forces us to report outages and even slowing down of the online services and how they impact customers. And associated with that, performance. Accessing legacy data via existing tools and architecture is inefficient. Performance suffers due to lack of scalability. Ensuring integrity and security in the new world all add heavy overheads in a traditional environment. So, in setting about a digital transformation journey, do you need to eat the elephant at one sitting, or are there incremental approaches? What I want to do is briefly overview an example of one option whereby value was added to the customer experience without having to change everything at the same time. And the objective was to exploit unused data assets to provide a bridge between old and new, proving concepts and building up experience in the organization. What we looked at was a way to find a hero project which exploited the data we had to add value and begin the digital journey without taking a highly disruptive and risky approach. We believe we had two great advantages. We hold a lifetime of customer information about finances and lifestyle, and we are perceived as secure and trustworthy. But the data is locked away in legacy environments, access is restricted, data migration is highly risky and disruptive, and the legacy architecture to support customer needs is poor. Therefore, we sought to build a hybrid solution that added value and moved the digital dial forward. So, what was our vision? What we wanted to do was to unlock our unused data asset, to minimize risk and reduce time to market by creating a common interface layer, building a hybrid architecture. We built an interface layer which enabled us to create a bridge between the legacy world and the future. We saw Nuxio Content Management Platform as being at the core of the program that we were launching. We wanted to deliver a secure document data lake with advanced Google-like capability. We wanted also to have improved control, audit, integrity, and security around this data lake. And finally, we wanted to use this to allow us to improve our fraud and financial crime systems. So, the outcome sought was ambitious but realistic. The plan was to provide a single view of all documents, communications in one place, regardless of data type, and to be used by both customers and the organization. We wanted to use metadata to enable machine learning to drive value from unstructured data, things like passports, checks, salary statements, etc. And this would provide secure storage for critical documents. We wanted to make sure that we were compliant and that we had flexible control over access and audit, which is extremely useful for financial crime and fraud, and also use this tool to enable us compliance with GDPR when we try to look at our unstructured data. We looked at how we would consolidate multiple obsolete image stores and move to a cloud-native environment, which would give us flexibility and performance as well as a cost reduction. Using APIs and simple open access, we'd be able to build customer-facing apps quickly and create a plug and play. What did it look like? You'll be quite glad to realize that this is not an accurate or technical representation, but on the left-hand side, we had our legacy source systems. We put an interface rules engine using machine learning. We also used character recognition, and we used a single comms control center and a secure vault storage. So we created a hybrid architecture to link the legacy world to the digital platform of the future. We started with the focus on unstructured data, and we used this to automate the validation of data, create intelligent responses, and build metadata to help us access unstructured data in a Google-like capability. The comms engine was to drive the management and control of all comms regardless of format. We consolidated all the unstructured data and built the metadata to add value. And we used standardized APIs to help us access and deliver new experiences through apps. This was quite a major change for us. And we used the same tools to internally add value around secure storage of financial crime data and investigations. So it was a win-win. What did we learn? Well, some of it might seem quite obvious, but it's worth reflecting on. I think the first thing is that you need to understand this is not a technology journey, but need to really focus on the business model and the vision. Because the impact of moving to a digital organization has enormous implications for the structure and organization of the business. If you're going to undertake a digital transformation program, I think we have to be very clear as to what is the customer outcome. What kind of added value do you think we're going to get for the customer experience? You need to understand the architecture, not just the technical architecture, but the functional and data architecture. And you need to understand both the start point and the endpoint and how components will fit in and how you can build out. It is incredible how many organizations do not have a detailed understanding and inventory of all three architectures and how they work together. And this is particularly true about understanding that the data the organization holds. What is often not picked up is that there is an enormous capability gap between the skills, organizational structure, and people that you have today, and what you will need in the future to be able to work in a digital environment. And in this, I'm not just talking about technology gap, but in order to operate in the digital world of the future, there are more hybrid roles combining business acumen with technology understanding. A forgotten area, which most people in business never see, is the need to rebuild and automate the development process to deliver a true DevOps environment for digital architecture. Without this, you will never speed up time to market, and you will never transform what you're doing, because the time taken to move applications through the various levels and to do the testing is what takes the time. Again, another area which many organizations, I think, need to have a close look at is to understand that you need to own, control, and manage the data as an asset. It's quite often interesting to ask in an organization, who owns the data? And quite often the response has been, it's technology. In this world, it can't be technology. So you need to understand who owns the data and who's accountable for making sure that it is accurate, up to date, and usable. And I think you need to have a clear roadmap. You know, this is not eating an elephant in one sitting. So you need to plan very clearly how you're going to get there. And what that means is that it takes a lot of time before you begin to start moving. There is enormous pressure to start doing things and to start launching programs and get things done. But like all these things, the more you plan up front, the more you understand the key elements of where you're going and what you need to prepare, the more likely you are to succeed. It is useful to say that in this world, to do nothing is not an option. Apologies, I managed to end before I meant to. So to summarize, digital technology is not what it's all about. It just provides the tools. Data is the asset to be exploited. It is data that will add value. The tools in themselves without content provide little value. Transformation from legacy to digital is much more than a technology program. It is a reinvention of the business. The risk of failure is high. It is expensive, and you need, therefore, to understand the huge investment in people as well as cash that you need to get ready to exploit. It's a long-term program of change, 3 to 5 years. So therefore, it's important to get value early on to help pay for the future. Thank you very much. Over to you, Lise.
Thank you, Norman. I hope you find it very insightful. If you have any question, you can ask it through the question and answer module at the bottom right of your screen. I have a few questions for you, Norman. What machine learning component have you used what types of rule have you configured?
Well, I think the best examples I can use is that we've used intelligent OCR, and I think it doesn't really matter which third party you use. There's a limited market, but I'm not here to plug particular companies. We also used text recognition, and the areas where we used these tools was, I can give you two options. One is on mortgage applications. Once you define the typical data that you need, such as earning statements, you can scan in the documents and you can extract the information you need, which helps build up the data you need to approve a mortgage. The second area we looked at was creating intelligent forms and using machine learning to train how to respond to customers' queries. So if you're going through form completion, traditionally you got a little window which gave you a piece of information. What we were looking at is to be able to lead you through, based on the information you were putting in or any questions you had, to provide value back to the customer to help them go through what is a complex area for them. As a financial institution, we obviously understand what we're asking and why we're asking for it. But for customers, this is a nightmare because they don't really understand why it's being asked and they're not quite sure of the terms and what we mean. So we used machine learning to help us define a better customer experience through giving them intelligence to help them fill in forms.
Thank you, Norman. I have another question which is more for me. Will you be making the slides available afterwards? Yes, we will send you the slides and replay after the webinar within a few days. Another question for you, Norman. Do you think the same level of digitization will hit the shores of private banking as well? What we have seen so far is for retail banking, because private banking, just like retail banking, is hungry for digitization. In fact, perhaps even more compared to retail banking.
I think in private banking, it will be the same pressures. And I think this comes back to the point about why are you doing digital transformation and what is the benefit for your customer. So we're already seeing changes because in a lot of private banking and so on, there's pressure to reduce costs and how much is charged to the customer. So whilst private banking has a very high value in personal links with the customer and an understanding, I think there needs to be a recognition that you will have different types of customers, and you will also have customers who wish to do certain things on their own. So there will be, through the power of changing things to a digital platform, you have a number of options which help you personalize your service to the individual much more, and you can gradiate how much you can deliver to them that they can make their own decisions or they can make their own investigations. And you can also change the way that you interact with your customers. But I think that the key point is using the data in private banking to add value and to give actually true personalization, because that's your differentiation.
Thank you, Norman. I have another question. So how did you select Nuxeo as a core? On what criteria?
I think that was quite an interesting one. We started out with the business view and the recognition that we had both a problem with the huge amount of unstructured data which we had in multiple databases and being interfaced via fairly obsolete software. So we recognized that we would have to do something to solve the obsolescence and the dangers and risks that came from that. But we were trying to set a criteria about not just solving yesterday's problem, but to define an environment that would help us bridge from legacy to the future and would start building the infrastructure and the environment. And so amongst our criteria were finding a tool set that would cover not only the ability to interface into legacy systems, but also to provide the added value in terms of being able to create metadata. We also set quite challenging performance requirements because accessing and interrogating unstructured data, even if you have very good metadata, is not always very quick in a number of systems and requires huge amounts of processing power. So we were looking for something which would provide us high performance because customers obviously value the high performance response. And again, in our requirements, we were looking for two other things. One was a platform that was fairly easy to use and to develop because we're on a journey and we don't have all the skills in-house in terms of digital experience. We had traditional mainframe software developers. So it was very important that the tools were easy to use. And the second was that they had an open architecture and therefore plug and play and open APIs were very important for us because the value added that we felt we would make is shaping and designing the customer interface, not necessarily building huge amounts of infrastructure and technology behind that. There wasn't a huge amount out there that we felt met all of those, and we created a shortlist of 3 companies, and we were very impressed by Nuxio's commitment, their technical skills. They had more skills than we had in creating the digital environment we needed. And the product ticked all the boxes we're looking for. And, you know, I have to say, we were quite impressed by Nuxio's willingness to be adaptable and flexible, because clearly this journey for us was something we weren't undertaking lightly, but we didn't know everything we needed to know. And they were very flexible in providing resource and assistance that go beyond just the implementation of the product.
Thanks a lot. I have another question. Data is the asset to be exploited. Yes, fully agreed. So do you think the Googles, Facebook, Amazons of today will somehow disrupt retail banks' businesses?
Well, I think it's quite interesting. Whilst there's been a lot of talk about this, and there's no doubt that Facebook, Google, if they wanted to create a bank, they could do so. And they certainly have more money than most banks put together. What is interesting is that they have chosen not to. And I think what we see is that the mechanism for disruption is much more likely to be around cherry picking things that are outside core banking. And I think they're doing this because of regulation. So certainly in Europe, banking is extremely highly regulated in a way that these technology providers as yet haven't experienced. And so therefore, they're looking at partnerships because their whole raison d'etre really is exploiting the data about customers and using that to sell on to other companies. And that's what I think they will continue to do. Where it makes sense for their core business, they will look at certain services that are provided by financial service companies and may cherry pick bits that are not highly regulated. I mean, there has been quite a lot of talk about these companies launching credit cards, but actually the heavy lifting and anything behind that is generally provided by a financial services organization. So I think the real risk is about these companies cherry picking areas that are not highly regulated but highly profitable for banks.
Thanks a lot, Norman. I think it's all for today. Thank you very much for this session. It was really insightful. If you have any question you would like to ask after the webinar, please contact us at contact@nexeo.com.